Hey, welcome to 1912 Productions. I'm your host, the amateur Titanic enthusiast, where my tagline is, I think I know what I'm talking about. So, Titanic. It existed, and it sure brought a lot of stuff with it. Its legacy is very important and is gone down in history as one of the most influential sinkings ever. And so, it's inevitable that would be put into an iceberg chart. How ironic. You know how this works. Let's just get into it. Unsinkable. The Titanic back then was often seen as unsinkable. This was thought by many, if not all, who encountered and heard about the ship. This reason for the mindset is the fact that it was the biggest ocean liner in the world at the time and was created by Thomas Andrews, a well-respected individual in his field of designing ships. Not only that, but the public news had advertised it as such, and her sister ship, the RMS Olympic, had collided with the HHS Hawk and didn't sink, giving the class its title of unsinkable. This would be proven false only 5 days into her maiden voyage. Without enough boats. It's common knowledge that the Titanic did not support enough lifeboats to fit everyone on board the ship. The capacity for all the boats at very maximum filled would have been 1,200 people. Even taking this number into account and not even addressing all but 2 were left at half capacity or less, this still would not have been enough to support the 2,700 people aboard the ship. It was just too little in any way you look at it. Largest ship in the world. At the time of its construction and launch and service, it was indeed the largest ship in the world. It was 882.75 feet long, beating out her sister Olympic at 882.9 feet long, beating her out by just that much. Built in Belfast. This is exactly what it says. The ship was constructed and launched in Harland and Wolff, Belfast. Most luxurious of its time. It was up to interpretation, but its talk and beautiful interior got the Titanic its reputation for being one of the most luxurious of its time, and for good reason. The ship contained squash courts, Turkish bath, a gymnasium, barber shop, and was also the first swimming pool on board a ship ever. Even the cheaper third-class cabins were of better standard than those of other liners in service at the time. It was truly something to behold. Titanic Belfast Museum. The Titanic Belfast Museum is a visitor attraction and museum that opened up in 2012 to Belfast's maritime heritage on the site of the former Harland and Wolff shipyard in the city's Titanic Quarter, where the Titanic was built. It tells the stories of the Titanic and, of course, her sisters Olympic and Britannic. It is one of the most popular of the Titanic museums, despite not having actual artifacts from the infamous ship. 11 Oscars. The famous movie by James Cameron was offered 14 Oscars and won 11 of them. This is quite a rare thing to happen for a movie, so it must be pretty good, right? Rose is only 17 years old. You might look at Rose and think she's actually 22, like her actress at the time, but I was actually shocked to find out that apparently she's 17 years of age in the events of the movie. I'm not sure if this was mentioned in the movie, I haven't watched it in a long time, or maybe it was just confirmed by the director, but I'm not sure where this age comes from. If you know where it is, let me know, please. Work conditions. The conditions for work aboard the Titanic were varied, depending on the job that you had taken up. Officers had mostly security and work aboard the bridge. There were stewards and stewardesses, cooks, bakers, waiters, the usual that you would find on an ocean liner. However, I think this entry is pointing to the coal workers in the bowels of the ship. The coal workers had worked in, day out. They barely got paid and never slept. and they would get harsh punishments if they ever slumped on the job. They have been named as unsung heroes, as they are the reason the ship lasted above the water as much as it did, as well as working hard to keep the lights on for as long as possible. Out of the 163 coal workers, 20 of them survived. Extra illumination. I think this is referring to the point I just made, that the coal workers had worked tirelessly and mortally to keep the lights on for as long as possible. It was just too much strain when the ship had reached 17 degrees and broke in half, taking most of the coal workers with her. Internal fire. This refers to the urban legend that a fire had been burning on the starboard side of the ship for 5 whole days. It was only spotted when they saw a dark black spot on the side of the ship and put it out. No one decided to patch it up, and many believe it could have contributed to the sinking, making the ship weaker when she had hit the iceberg. It's mind-boggling to me that no one had noticed a fire for 5 whole days. It's really sort of unbelievable. Too drunk to die. Charles Jogian, I can't, I'm gonna mispronounce so many names on this channel, was a British chef that worked aboard the Titanic on her maiden voyage and had a major appetite for booze. God, I gotta tell you, this man was a legend. This man got so drunk that he never got on a boat, stumbled up and down into and out of the ship, stayed on the ship as it both sank and split apart, and stayed in the freezing water for hours, and lived and walked it off like it was just another Monday. I'll be sure to make a video about him in the future, as his story is just crazy. Titanic will disappear by 2030. Recent expeditions have found that the wreck of the Titanic is actually slowly disintegrating. This is due to a newfound bacteria on the ship that's eating away at the rust and hull of the ship. It's estimated to be gone by either 2030 or 2050. This will, however, give us an opportunity to find relics and other things deep within the ship that we have no regular means of getting to. No watchers. This is not true. There were 2 people in charge of seeing and watching for any sort of threat that faced the Titanic. However, the night of the sinking was just too dark, but by the time they saw the iceberg, it was too late. 4 explosions. Many survivors reported hearing not just 1 or 2 explosions, but 4 of them come from the bowels of the ship. Many have theorized that it was actually torpedoes or the boiler room explosions that had sunk the ship. This is false. What they most definitely heard was the iceberg slam into the side of the ship as it scraped past 4 watertight compartments. Movie price. The 1997 movie was made at a price tag of $200 million. This was right on the dot to make the actual ship $200 million as well. That was a very crazy coincidence, if I do say so myself. Titanic sisters. Titanic was actually the second ship in her 3-class ship. I won't go into too much detail on the other 2 as I want to make future videos on them, but her other sisters were the RMS Olympic, who went on to have a full career, and the HMHS Britannic, who sank in World War I. Final song of the band. The band on board of the Titanic has played throughout the sinking up until the water was at their feet. The final song they played is believed to be Nearer My God to Thee, the song playing in the background. Some believe it to be Autumn, however, this has much less credit from the survivors who heard the music from the boats and those who were on board the ship. The last song they played was in fact Nearer My God to Thee. Real Jack found. Jack Dawson is a fictional character from the 1997 Titanic movie and the love interest to Rose. Many have asked and wondered if they were inspired by anyone real or real at all. They were not real passengers, but some believe Jack Dawson was real. Why? Because of a simple gravestone with the title J. Dawson, no birth date or first name, just his death date. So, is this truly Jack Dawson? Well, no. The name is actually Joseph Dawson, and he was a trimmer on board the Titanic. Crewmate suicide. Once again, I'll make a future video on him, but William Murdoch was the chief officer of the Titanic, and many reported that he had committed suicide after shooting at 2 passengers. This is an unconfirmed report, as there are many conflicting stories. Nazi Titanic. The Nazi Titanic, known as the Willhelm Gustloff, was a German ocean liner and the biggest in its fleet in the 30s and 40s. When it served in World War II, the ship was shot at by 2 Soviet torpedoes and sank in under an hour. This ship was absolutely packed with soldiers and crew, nearly 10,000 people on the ship. Over 9,000 had died. It is the worst ship disaster in history. So why is it never talked about? Well, it was a ship created by Germany at the time the Nazis were in charge, so it's not a light subject, therefore not often talked about. Futility, the wreck of the Titan. Futility is an 1898 novel created by Morgan Robertson. The book tells the story of an ocean liner, the biggest in the world, named Unsinkable and the most luxurious at its time. It would have traveled across the Atlantic and collide with an iceberg where less than 1/3 of all of its passengers made it off the ship. Now, does that story sound familiar? It's near exact to what happened with the Titanic. It was near perfect prediction of what would come 13 years later. It is quite creepy stuff. Edward Smith's death. Edward John Smith was the captain of the Titanic and was supposed to be his last voyage before his retirement. His death has been a famous one. It's commonly accepted that his final words were, "Well, boys, you've done your duty and done it well. I ask no more of you," before he locked himself in the bridge as he held onto the wheel and went down with his ship. The Titanic Curse. Ever since it was being built, the Titanic seemed to have been cursed from the very start. 7 people had died during its construction. There were supposed graffiti written on the hull of the ship, yelling and warning of the danger yet to come. The rest of construction, after being laid down, was pushed back, along with its sail date. It nearly collided with other boats coming out of the dock, and lifeboat drills had been canceled. There's a lot more to it, but the ship was truly cursed from the beginning. Jack is a time traveler. This is a theory poised by film theory that Jack is actually a time traveler, to go back to intentionally sink the Titanic to avoid millions of lives to die on the same ship in the future World War I. This is based on the hypothetical Titanic survive scenario and would have been turned into a warship just like an Olympic and Britannic. These are one of those fun theories to think about with barely any leeway or great evidence. German submarine. This is a popular conspiracy theory that it was not an iceberg that sunk the ship, but a German U-boat that shot a torpedo at the ship. People try to support this by pointing to testimony where some people heard an explosion and that not everyone saw an iceberg. This theory is false. What they heard was the iceberg, and the reason why not everyone saw the iceberg is because not everyone was out on the decks, guys. Most people were sleeping. It was an iceberg, end of story. Titanic split V-brake. This refers to the theory by Aaron 1912, where he tries to use witness testimony and his own delusions to make the claim that Titanic split in half in a V, where the bow came back up as it broke in half. I think you can look at this and see how ridiculous that is. If you want an in-depth video on why this is impossible, check out Titanic Animation's video about it. Link in the description. Mummies cursed doomed the Titanic. This is referring to the myth that a cursed mummy's tomb was aboard the Titanic, and due to its terrible past, i.e. it killed those who unburied it and brought shame to the night guards in its museum, it is believed it could have sunk the ship. I'm not sure where this comes from. There is no truth to this, and it's just another ghost story. Cursed company. The White Star Line could be seen as a cursed company. The SS Atlantic sunk 20 years earlier than the Titanic, being the worst ship disaster until the Titanic took that title. The Olympic was a part of 5 incidents with other ships. The Britannic was the largest ship lost in the First World War. The company dealt in shady money deals and eventually had to be bought out by the Cunard line, their rival. It could very well be seen as a cursed company, as everything just seemed to go wrong for them. W.T. Stead Premonitions. W.T. Stead was a British editor and critic on books and news, and died in the sinking of the Titanic. According to urban legend, he had seen his death aboard the Titanic years prior to his trip on the actual ship. Subsequently, when the ship sank, he reportedly did not try to save himself at all, and instead helped out as many other people as possible. Is there any truth to him knowing that he would die aboard a ship that didn't even exist when he supposedly saw his demise? Who knows, but that's what he claimed. FED conspiracy. A conspiracy theory that had popped up years ago is that J.P. Morgan, the man who funded the construction of the Titanic, intentionally sank the ship to get rid of his 3 competitors. I couldn't find more on this theory, therefore I can say with confidence that it is not true. J.P. Morgan did not kill his competitors. Heroic dog. This refers to a Newfoundland black dog named Rigel. I will make a video about this dog later, but what this entry is referring to is the dog reportedly saved passengers aboard a ship and died a hero dog. Titanic never sinks. This has been talked about time and time again, and I will also make a video on this in the future. The basic talking points is that the Titanic and the Olympic had swapped identities, and the Olympic, now Titanic, would be sunk to claim the insurance money to finish the Titanic, now Olympic. All this because money dried up or something else. It's a dumb conspiracy and has really no basis other than fabricated shots in weird angles that look off. But who really knows? Perhaps there is some truth to this. And that wraps up the Titanic Iceberg. I had a lot of fun making this. This was the first time I actually attempted something like this. I felt it would be a perfect way to kick off this new channel, as, you know, Iceberg videos are just cool, and it has a lot of information, and this iceberg has a lot of talking points that I will want to come back to in future videos, as I said throughout this video. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a like down there if you enjoyed it, and hey, if you are just as big as a Titanic enthusiast as me, why not push that sub button, as I will be talking about all things Titanic. So until next time, goodbye!